Well, good morning. Saturday morning. I've just woken up, well not just, but woken up fairly recently and saw that the National Association of Head Teachers are live streaming their annual conference, which is a fantastic opportunity, a fantastic insight into the work of a bunch of people who I personally know to be incredibly committed, incredibly hardworking, incredibly beleaguered, incredibly misunderstood. And I think the fact that they're restreaming their conference today is absolutely fantastic. It's a sign of openness, it's a sign of potential collaboration, a sign of trying to understand differences between different groups of people, head teachers, even teachers are different groups of people, head teachers and the community they serve, the immediate communities within the settings of the schools that they serve, but the broader communities, because we are our children, we are our education system. You could argue that we are our head teachers. I am Nick Horston. I'm a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts and Manufacturers and Commerce, based here, as you can see, in John Adams Street. Beautiful, beautiful site. I'm one of 35,000 fellows around the world who do what they can to use their ideas and what they have at their disposal to make the world a better place, working and collaborating with other people. And I really am absolutely delighted to have just been given permission by the National Association of Head Teachers to restream this event using the technology which we have at our disposal here at STEAMco, which is a non-profit community interest organisation which I co-founded in my son's school 10 years ago, actually 10 years ago this month. 5 years ago I gave my career up to roll out across the country to help connect our kids with their art and our communities with schools, to help our kids aim not just high but higher than high, powered by their creativity, powered by community. So my interest here is creativity in all its forms. Education is a massive part of that, there's no doubt about that, and I've been proud and honoured to collaborate with some incredible school leaders. I call them brave school leaders because they're brave if they understand the value of art and creativity and these new ways of working, of ways of collaborating. If they understand this and then apply it in their work, they are changing lives, they're changing communities, and they're ultimately changing our country. So I call them brave school leaders, a phrase I got from Steve Williamson, the head teacher at Northern Saints Primary up in Sunderland 5 years ago actually. So we'll cut to inside, if you'll bear with me a second. I'll just press a button here and cut to inside the Royal Society of the Arts. This is the great room at the RSA, and we've got somebody speaking here. So basically the format that the NAHT are adopting at the moment, by the look of it, and I haven't been privy to many of these events, it's a day of discussing motions and agendas, but these motions are a fantastic insight into the daily lives of our schools, of our teachers, of our leaders, of our children, of our communities. And in these motions, you'll hear some of the challenges they face, some of the things they need to change, they want to change, that they know they'll never change. So I think if we can go live to that now and hear what's being said, that'd be great.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And do we have anyone who wishes to speak? No. Let's move to the vote then. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's great. Is it Gail? Gail, you're welcome. Please
Have to excuse me here, we've come straight into a vote. So they present a motion and then discuss it and then vote on it. So I'm not too sure what the particular motion was because I was talking over it, but you'll find that you'll get the hang of it.
I support this motion and I've seconded it because I've got 3 current cases that I'm dealing with in Surrey where head teachers have been suspended because of the actions of the Lado in Surrey, who, if I said incompetent, that would be underestimating how she actually behaves. Her first port of call is to go back, say it hasn't met the threshold, but go back to the Chair of Governors and say, but suspend the member while we investigate. On one of my cases, the member has been suspended for 18 months. Yeah, and she has now been reinstated back to her school, although I think she's going to find it very difficult to go back. So I think we do have to have this framework for Lado so that it's consistent right across the country. So I second the motion.
Thank you, Gail. We have 2 more speakers. Please go. We've got Mike either side. Please go. It's great to have people coming up to speak. Let's start. Dave, we'll start with you, and then Anne will take you next. Thank you, Dave.
Dave Woods, London Region, Ealing Branch. In support of this motion, I also think we need to include not just the accountability framework, but something about ongoing regular training. All of us who do the role as a DSL or an assistant DSL, we have to update our training regularly. So that's something that should be in the framework. And the other question also is about the appointment of LADOs. How are they appointed? Who appoints them? Because it's another grey area. No one actually really seems to know. And if it's like the LADO in my area, sometimes they're just missing in action and you can't actually find them. And so I think, yes, we need to support the motion, but definitely also with the regular updated training in the same way that anyone doing a DSL role does as well. Thank you.
Mr. President, colleagues, my last conversation with a Lado was a very positive experience, and it was before the most recent update of keeping children safe in education, where we worked with the Lado, possibly with something that didn't meet the threshold, but we had the most amazing support and came to a positive conclusion and outcome. It's really important, particularly with the new guidance for keeping children safe, that we do have this support, that we do have accurate, fair decisions that are made so that we are doing the right thing for often our most vulnerable children. It's so important. Our members are going to be left very vulnerable if we don't have, as Dave has said, regular training, that we don't have those conversations and that we don't get those outcomes for those young people that we serve and the schools that they're in. Thank you.
Next speaker at mic 2, please.
Good morning. I'm Sue Thackeray from the East Riding of Yorkshire. I'm sitting here just having very recently retired, listening to what's being said. And in East Riding, we've always had an excellent Lado. He retired springtime sometime. The post has just been advertised at £32,000. And we were just saying, you're not going to get the quality of Lado compared to what we had for that salary. I had an excellent assistant head who would have made the best Lado imaginable, but she can't afford to take that salary cut. So that's the issue we're in. We're in an issue where people aren't being paid properly for the positions that they're expected to take. When we're talking about starting NQTs at 30,000 and yet the responsibility of the ladder at 32, it just doesn't add up. Thank you.
Morning all, newbie here, nice to see you. NQT
We've all got to start somewhere.
from the newly reinvigorated Worcestershire branch. I have been, thank you, that's very kind, and most unexpected, but carry on. Worcestershire, in its wisdom, in inverted commas, has changed the way that a laddo is assigned. We used to have two guys who were absolutely, totally committed to the role and knew what they were doing because they knew what was happening in schools. Now it is a magic sort of musical chairs arrangement where a social worker is assigned to carry out a case. And the last one I went through ended up with a position of trust meeting where I was on trial by an individual who was asking questions that no one who would, even if they were an NQT, would ask a school leader. 34 years in education, to be patronised by somebody who has absolutely no idea what the child is going through, how to deal with a difficult parent, or to understand the anxiety of my colleagues who were put at risk. No advice because there was no experience. I fully support this motion for those very reasons. A national standard, just like those of us who are safeguarding children and our colleagues in schools go through. Colleagues, I fully support this motion, to your surprise.
It's great to have people coming up from the floor. It's great to have debate. Thank you for encouraging that as we go forward the rest of the day. Right, I think we're ready to proceed to the vote. So for those in favour, please would you show? Thank you very much. And for those against, unanimously carried. Thank you. Okay, we now move to motion number 19. This deals with safeguarding online. It's in the name of the North West region. It's on page 41. The proposer is Jim Nicholson. Seconder Amanda Hume. Welcome, Jim.
Morning again, conference. I've no jokes for this because actually it's a bit of a sombre moment. This motion came about after a few conversations with colleagues, and when you unpick it, this particular topic, it just seems to grow and grow and become ever more complex. A colleague yesterday, keep this into your minds while I'm talking, from Ireland, talked about this as being Priya Widja, the term from Ireland being chief carer. What an amazing term. Thanks for that, Graham, because with that term in my head is now how I speak. One of the most challenging, spine-chilling moments any member of a school ever experience is that moment when a young person takes that deep breath and then trusts us with information regarding a form of abuse that they've experienced. This aspect of our work has always existed, but now the means by which it manifests itself have become ever more complex. Our young people now have access to devices that can expose them to explicit sexual material, graphic violence, trauma, exploitation, abuse, manipulation, offensive racist language, and the list is extensive. This access is in the quiet of their bedrooms. It's on their friendship platforms. The term friend has changed, and they carry it in their back pockets. Yes, this technology has the power to inform and inspire, but it also has the power to destroy. How many of us know of children under the age of 11 who have access to 18+ material through technology? It's estimated now that 86% of 8 to 11-year-olds have a smart mobile phone. 97% of young people between the age of 12 and 15. A pause for thought. What does this really mean for our children? We asked school leaders in the North West what their experience had been in the last 12 months. 30% reported children accessing explicit pornographic material. 25% reported cases of children being groomed. 75% reported children gaming using multiplayer platforms with people unknown to them beyond their friendship group. 95% of children accessing apps, online, films and games inappropriate for their age. 88% of children using social media apps, resulting in a negative impact upon their well-being. These are stark statistics. Our young people have been given Pandora's box with which to play, and their natural curiosity takes them down roads that no child should ever find themselves. To combat this, schools try to develop lessons and schemes of work. We use resources such as Think You Know, yet still we see rapid change and impact upon our children. We put on training sessions for our communities in the hope that that will help. But all too often, schools report low attendance. And when things go wrong, the safeguarding hubs and services, including the police, are so thinly stretched that they cannot act quickly. We have a public health crisis, colleagues, in our children due to increased access to internet-based technologies. This cannot be the responsibility of just schools. As we know, safeguarding is the responsibility of everyone. In order to address this increasing risks associated with internet-based technologies, we must create a multi-agency proactive response and a universal programme to support parents and schools consistently and strategically. We must develop a programme that will educate and support our communities on a national scale and create a support infrastructure for parents, carers, teachers and other professionals linked through children's services. We must ensure that government insists on the safeguarding legislation for technology providers that enables prosecution when companies fail to meet the standard identified in their charter. And we must change the social status quo so that inappropriate online activity becomes completely unacceptable to parents, carers and children. For example, children having access to film and social media beyond their age. We must create, therefore, a national strategy that will reduce the number of cases of child exploitation and trauma related to internet use and misuse. Conference, I move.
Thank you, Jim. I see nobody. Oh, yes, I've got a few people. Simon, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. That's really important, and I think it's amazing, isn't it, what our children have got in their pockets and what they can do with them. But I think what I just want to make comment on is the fact that the government seems to keep revisiting this notion of banning mobile phones in schools, and it keeps coming up again and again. The recent Teacher Tap survey says there's 100% of schools have restrictions when they are allowed on the premises. And I like having mobile phones that our Year 6 bring to school, because they give them into the office, and they're locked away, but their parents like it because they can see where they are when they're going home. But I also like it as a school leader because I can nip those issues in the bud. So if there's been some WhatsApp messaging between the Year 6 WhatsApp group where there's been some unkind behaviour, I can do that and I can coach them about how to use them because the technology is not going away. And I think the narrative of saying let's ban them is completely futile.
Thank you, Simon. Anyone else wishing to speak? In that case, we will move to the vote. Those in favour, please would you show? Thank you. And those against? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Okay, we now move to motion number 20. This is to do with the pay of school business leaders, and it is standing in the name of the School Business Leaders Council. It's page number 41 of your brochure. Proposer. Good morning, Rachel. Rachel to propose, and Emella to second.
Morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Younger. I'm branch secretary in Blackpool and chair of our School Business Leaders Sector Council. Sisters, brothers, those of you who have been attending conference for a number of years will have heard me and other school business leaders present motions on this subject before, but I make no apology for speaking about it again. For many of our school business leader members, this is still a major issue, and they need their trade union, our trade union, to continue fighting about this. In a single school setting, SBLs deputise parts of the head teacher's role in the same way as other members of the senior leadership team. In a multi-academy trust setting, they deputise parts of the chief executive officer's role in posts such as chief operating officer. It should, therefore, be straightforward to pay SBLs a salary which is in line with other senior leaders who are part of the same team, and in keeping with the level of accountability and responsibility of their roles. Sadly, the reality for many of our SBL members shows that this is not straightforward at all. Despite our best efforts year after year to convince government that SBLs need to be part of the same salary structure as other school leaders, nothing has changed. They seem to have put it in the too hard to do box. Or maybe the can't be bothered box. Our SBL Sector Council believes that we should continue to make our case with government, but is also asking that we make use of other avenues to get to where we need to be. I have heard many of you in this room and other NEHT colleagues talk about the vital role that SBLs carry out in your schools and trusts. I know that you understand their value. Please support this motion and show all our SBL members that NEHT can be bothered. Thank you.
Morning, conference. Andy Mellor, Blackpool Branch President and SBL Sector Council member. I stand before you as someone who has come through to school leadership through the classroom route and benefited from the leadership pay scale. But for too long, our SBL pay has been the Cinderella of leadership pay, and it's not good enough. SBL roles, leadership roles, being advertised at £20,000 per annum, less than an NQT, and they're still out there, those adverts. That's an insult to our members. And our SBL members are just as important to the NEHT as any other member of the NEHT. We wouldn't advertise deputy head teacher and assistant head teacher roles at £20,000 per annum. So why, with their unique leadership skills, should SBLs be paid less than those leaders in similar leadership roles? It's time to pay our SBLs as the valued school leaders they are. I urge you to support this motion and secure our members the pay that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. See no one else. Oh, yes, sorry. Jim, come on. Thank you.
Jim Nicholson Branch. Sorry, Jim Nicholson Branch.
Freudian slip.
It was a long night last night. And an early morning. Just speaking in support of this motion. Colleagues, we do have members of NEHT in positions of authority, clearly, that can make a difference to SBLs in their schools regarding pay and fight for that. But school budgets And the conversations that I hear as branch secretary actually prohibit it, stop it, cause conflict of interest for our heads to actually be speaking up for stronger salaries inside their own schools. It's not easy, but our membership needs to stand by this motion. We have to stand up for our SBLs and get what they deserve because the job is so complex, and you know it. But we still have our own members not doing enough for their own SBLs, and this is why this motion is so needed. Support this motion, colleagues.
Thank you, Jim. I think we can then move to the vote. For those in favour, would you please show? Thank you. Those against? And that is unanimously carried. Thank you. Right, moving then on to motion number 21. This is to do, subject close to my heart, public service pay. And it's standing in the name of the, let me just double check this, is the assessment group. Essex branch, I apologise, Essex branch. So Alan, you're going to propose, second by Eureka. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Good. I have never met anybody in a school who is not embarrassed to talk about their pay. And I don't imagine there are many NHT members who would feel comfortable taking industrial action about their pay. But something has to change. According to a former fireplace salesman, we have shown extraordinary dedication during the pandemic. Well, breaking news, Gav, we always have. Even went so far as to say they have shown extraordinary dedication and flexibility in adapting to different ways of working while continuing to provide high-quality education for all pupils during this uniquely difficult period. And then what did he do? He backed up those kind words by directing the independent STRB to freeze our pay. What a lovely Christmas present that was. Our dedication, as always, has been taken for granted. We've kept our schools open through the holidays. We've plugged the gaps or lack of reach in other children's services. School leaders have remained on call throughout holidays and weekends. The STRB actually want to sort our pay out. The NGA want to sort our pay out. And it is in this government's best interest to sort our pay out. It's not a question of not being able to afford it. They can't afford not to. Our school leaders are exhausted, and early retirement for many is looking an attractive option. And the next generation of leaders are looking on ruefully, wondering whether headship and senior leadership should remain their ambition. And graduates are seeing other career paths as more attractive and better rewarded. We do not need to be and should not be embarrassed talking about our pay. And we can quote the NGA. The NGA stated it is difficult to understand how imposing a public sector pay freeze on teachers can be justified. We can quote the STRB. Their 31st report urged that they be allowed to fully exercise their role in making recommendations on pay uplifts for all teachers and school leaders for 22-23 based on the evidence. Going on to say they support a review of the existing leadership pay framework, including the factors determining pay for school leaders, the issue of pay differentials between the teacher and leadership pay ranges, and the leadership roles covered by the pay structure. So let's build a campaign on those words so that the STRB gets its teeth back. Now, colleagues, I'm proud to be a leader who has supported and guided my school community through the pandemic. You can read all about it in my book. Still got copies. Ours is not the only public service that has shown extraordinary dedication over the past 18 months. We have looked after and educated their children whilst many have worked on the front line. And yet we have seen many of those families struggle financially despite being in work doing essential jobs. And we have seen for ourselves the impact on children and young people. And we know the links between poverty and crime for our young people. Don't take my word for it. These are the words of retiring Merseyside Police Commissioner Andy Cook, who said, "The best crime prevention is increased opportunity and reduced poverty." Theresa May once talked of the burning injustices suffered by working families, the jams just about managing. Well, there are many more jams than ever, and actually many of them are not even just about managing anymore. May insisted work is the best route out of poverty, but about 60% of British people in poverty now live in households where someone is in work. Keeping the jam family finances in good condition increasingly requires the salaries of two working parents, and yet for many, the good quality, affordable childcare remains out of reach. As school leaders, we are key figures in our communities. We may feel uncomfortable to stand up and demanding pay recognition for ourselves, but we can stand up alongside other unions and campaign for fair pay for all public sector workers, to lift many out of poverty, others to be able to manage independently, and everybody, including us, to be rewarded for our extraordinary dedication. Conference, support this motion, then go back to your schools and lead your communities in a public service pay campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Michelle, you're for the next motion. Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak at either of the mics? No. In that case, let us move to the vote. If you are in favour, would you please show? Thank you. And those against? That's relief. Right. The motion is unanimously carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we now go on to motion 22A, which is a lead motion, and there are also two lettered motions which we will come to afterwards. The lead motion is in relation to SATs. It's standing in the name of the West Midlands region, and Michelle is here to propose.
Thank you. I seem to be doing this motion every year for some reason, but hopefully people will listen. Last year, our then Secretary of State made a very welcome statement, as noted in Schools Week. I quote, "SATs will be cancelled this year following the decision to partially close schools," the Education Secretary has said. Gavin Williamson said that the government recognised that primary tests will be an additional burden on schools. A sensible decision, given the circumstances that still exist today. How many of our schools have been unaffected by COVID this term? Very few, I would think. In May 2020, the Schools Minister told the Education Select Committee that SATs were not qualifications for young people, that they were a form of accountability for the school system. Therefore, as the reason for statutory primary assessment is for accountability purposes, surely the reason SATs were cancelled last year still applies. Our current Year 6 children all had hugely different experiences during the previous school year, and the differences continue today. Last year I proposed a motion asking for SATs to be cancelled. I asked how we could have standard attainment tests when nothing about the experiences of different school settings was in fact standard. This continues to be the case. If data from the SATs is being used to compare schools, it is desperately unfair. The SATs, quite simply, are not fit to be used for accountability purposes. If, as the Minister for Schools said, this is their only purpose, then why would we be wasting time administering costly and pointless tests? The same applies to other statutory primary assessments. We've already seen the introduction of baseline, which has taken our reception teachers away from their classes during the vital settling in period to administer the test to individual children. Using this test for accountability purposes is definitely questionable. Question. Mum bought bananas and some flowers.
Oh, it's confidential. This is a brilliant question.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes. Please carry on.
Okay, that's all right. She gave Sam a banana. Sam ate the banana. Sam's mum bought bananas. What else did she buy? Child number 1, wine. Child number 2, moisturiser. Child number 3, octopus. I would virtually guarantee that on a different day, these children would give completely different answers. If baseline assessment as it exists is used to measure progress, I look forward to these children being in Year 6. I would imagine our progress measures will be very high indeed. It is too late to cancel baseline assessment this academic year, but we really must question its effectiveness as an accountability measure. We've heard a great deal about the terrible gaps that exist in our children's education as a result of COVID. We've been given recovery funding to help them catch up. But what do we mean by recovery? Do we mean a true recovery of our education system as a result of reflection on our current practice? Or do we mean narrowing our curriculum and putting the children through intensive tutoring sessions so that they can perform well in tests in 1 week next May? The absence of SATs for the previous 2 years has not had any adverse effects. On the contrary, children and teachers have been relaxed and able to personalise learning so that children could progress as quickly as possible in an atmosphere free from pressure and conducive to their well-being. If, due to the pandemic, these tests cannot be used for their only purpose, accountability, then they are pointless. COVID has made us stop and reflect on many practices, and many changes for the better have been made in our everyday lives as a result of these reflections. We need to cancel statutory assessments in primary school next year and use this time to reflect on how we can improve primary assessment in the future. Conference, I urge you to support this motion. Thank
you, Michelle, and welcome Emily to speak.
Emily Prophet, Staffordshire branch. I fully support this motion. In Stafford at the moment we see the highest levels of COVID reoccurring across the country, and all of our schools are back into full measures that we saw pre-September. How on earth can our children be expected to be put through these ridiculous assessments and milestones when we are back to the measures that we saw last year? SATs have to be reviewed this year. They have to be looked at, and the significance of them moving forward and the purpose of them just needs to be completely reviewed. It's not effective, it's not right for our children, and we need to look at this seriously. Thank you, Conference.
Before we take any further speakers on the lead motion, we do have 2 lettered motions, so I need to give the proposer and seconders an opportunity, if they wish, to speak, and then we'll take other speakers. So 22B is to do with primary statutory assessment, North Eastern region. If either Deborah or Shannon wishes to speak, please come forward. And then lettered motion 22C, primary post-assessment, NEHT Northern Ireland. Graham or Carmen wish to speak, please come forward. In which case then I would invite anyone else who wishes to speak. We're going back to the lead motion now. Please come forward. Thank you. Mic number 2.
Tim Newbold, Branch Secretary of Wrexham in Wales. I moved from headship in England to headship in Wales in 2008, and some years before that, SATs had been abolished in Wales. And you know what? Welsh children are still literate, numerate, and I'm finding now children who were in school, my school, when I started being a head, they are, in many families, the first children in their family ever to go to university. So we don't need SATs, and all your Welsh colleagues will be supporting this motion.
Hi colleagues, Keith Wright, North West Branch Region, Lancashire Branch, and recent National Executive Member. I was one of the people that took great pride in boycotting the SATs in 2010 in Norfolk. Didn't do them any harm. I know some years ago it was in the press that they'd gone through GCSEs. I don't think they suffered. I don't think the secondary schools minded them not doing them. I employed a couple of my part-time teachers to do a few extra hours, see if we can use the recovery fund, but unfortunately, with an outbreak in my school, they've had to cover classes and absences. So my children across the year group, particularly year 1, have been in, they've been out. We've got a baseline assessment that we've got 2 general elections before we see the fruit of it, I'm sure. And the way I see it is this: my children have been in, out, sometimes shaking it all about with high temperatures. They haven't quite done the hokey-cokey, but I'll tell you what, I'm turning around because that's what it's all about. We don't need the SATs. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was great. Mind you, how can anybody follow that? That's the only problem. Well, we do. Marvellous. Go on, Marika. Which song are you going to come out with?
I'll be very brief. Normally I'm here talking as a special needs practitioner, but primarily I am a secondary practitioner and a secondary head teacher. And whilst this looks like a primary issue, it is absolutely a secondary issue too. I think it's, I might not get the title right, I think it's Cathy O'Neill, Weapons of Mass Destruction, who's really, really clear about the fact that that you would need thousands and thousands of cohorts of statistics to show that a practitioner had the effect on outcomes. So what I'm saying is that SATs at the end of a primary school education do virtually nothing for primary schools. It's not telling you anything about what you do. It's not telling you anything about your teachers. This is a real opportunity for our sector councils to work together, because the question we need to ask secondary schools is, what have you lost that those children coming through without SATs don't have? And maybe, what have you gained? What are you seeing? What's the difference? So let's just be really clear. This is just not a primary issue, and let's get our sector councils working together to understand what we, if we lost anything, and certainly what we might have gained. Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to speak? Would you like to come up? Thank you. No? Okay. In that case, let us move to the vote. Those in favour, would you please show? That's great. Thank you. Those against, please show. And that is unanimously carried. Thank you very much. Now we move to motion 23, which is training for lead assessors. And it's standing in the name of ARG. Amanda Hume is going to propose.
Thank you. Firstly, members of ARG are fully in support of all the motions that were presented under number 22, and I thought I'd take this time to speak rather than come to the 2-minute mic. The arguments have been eloquently voiced, and it's something we've been fighting for, many of you will know, for many, many years. The SATS campaign started when my daughter was in year 1. She's now at college and she's 19. So, you know, we're working hard and we're trying our very best, but we do still have a very long way to go. And I think particularly motion 22B, we do need to look at our policy position. We need to look at what we need to do next to support the children and how we work as an association to move forward with that. So I'm going to concentrate on the training aspect. Following the report of the Assessment Reform Group, the NEHT's current policy position is that all those responsible for children's learning should undertake rigorous training in formative, diagnostic and summative assessment. The government should provide support and resources for the development of independently accredited training for school assessment leads. As a profession, we are all aware of the importance of the need for high quality, rigorous and accurate assessment. We are expected to be the experts in this field, and often we are. But the opportunities for training to increase confidence, knowledge and skills are limited. Interestingly, the government in the past has questioned our ability to assess accurately, but has never offered support or training to the many thousands of teachers and leaders carrying out this role on a daily basis. It is now time for the government to stop criticising and start supporting by providing funding for the development of independently accredited training for lead assessors in every school. This opportunity is afforded to all schools in Northern Ireland through the Chartered Institute of Educational Assessors and should be available for all schools in England and Wales too. The CIEA was set up to improve standards in educational assessment. They support assessors by providing specialist, high-quality training for individuals and organisations, and they provide accreditation for individuals against an assessment framework, with a clear progression route for those who meet the professional standards. The Assessment and Accountability Group has met with the CIEA on a number of occasions and sees real value in continuing to work with them to develop assessors in all schools who will provide leadership in establishing robust assessment procedures and practices.
We know that ongoing high-quality assessment is at the heart of effective teaching and learning. And however experienced we are in assessing our children, we know that there is always something to learn. Working alongside the CIAA will provide us with the professional development we need to challenge the government's view once and for all. If the government truly believes that assessment is the key to success for all of our children, then a promise of adequate funding and support and resources for this training and development opportunity would surely be the obvious way forward. Mr. President, colleagues, I move.
Thank you, Amanda. I don't think we have anybody speaking to either of the mics, so let us move to the vote. For those in favour, would you please show? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. That motion is unanimously carried. Conference, we're doing well for time, so what we propose before we break for coffee and a chance to visit the exhibitors, we're going to take the emergency motion now rather than at the end of the day. I'm sure you'll agree that is a good use of time. The well-being motions, they will be at the beginning of our next debating session. We just want to give you an opportunity to read this motion, and then in a few seconds I will call the proposer. So please just take a moment to read the emergency motion regarding teachers' pay and conditions. Okay, this is standing in the name of the West Midlands region. And Amy, would you come to the mic? Thank you.
Good morning, President, and good morning, Conference. Thank you for having me. It's my first time at the NAHD Conference, so forgive my nerves. I still haven't actually led a school assembly since March 2020, so this is a big step. And on top of that, I took advantage of the hospitality last night, the gala dinner, a little bit too much, although I did get back to my room still in possession of my shoes, so I did better than some. Now, to the motion, which I was driven to write through just pure anger and disgust, really. I urge you to join our sister unions, the NEU and ASCL, and support this motion and send a clear message to the government that removing the cap to teachers' directed hours is the wrong answer to the wrong question. First and foremost, we have a duty of care to our staff. We know that our staff work many, many more hours than the 1265 directed hours. We know this because we did it when we were in class. This is also backed up by international OECD data. We know we have a recruitment and retention crisis already. We know this to have been true pre-COVID, through COVID, and post-COVID. We don't need or want our teachers to work more hours. Our teachers do not have the capacity to give more, and we cannot and should not use them to fill in the gaping holes in the government's failed tuition policy. We know our children need some catch-up learning, but we know also they are not a lost generation. They need to know, the need is not so desperate as to warrant this attack on our profession. As our own General Secretary said yesterday in his speech, we should not use our expertise and experience to make bad plans work. We need to work on a better plan that meets the needs of our children and young people. A sustainable plan that brings about lasting change, not a poorly thought out, tired and predictable idea that reeks of disrespect for our profession. By passing this motion, we send a clear message to our sisters and brothers in schools, as well as to the government, that we know that 1265 goes nowhere near the number of hours that teachers work. It tells them also that we demand proper funding and not exploitation. It shows that we want and need our teachers to stay in the profession for more than 5 years. We want and need our teachers to be mentally and physically well so they can do their best. We won't facilitate levelling up on the cheap And finally, and most importantly, we as school leaders and teachers ourselves recognise and value the professionalism of our staff. This unnecessary attack on the terms and conditions of our colleagues cannot be allowed to go unchallenged. President, Conference, I move.
Thank you, Amy.
In seconding this motion, I hope I have just a few seconds to say a few more things. Leaders, we know what it's like not to have a cap on our working hours. We must protect our teachers 1265. We must stand firm to an erosion of paying conditions that our unions have long fought for. If 1265 goes, what next? PPA? Or what comes in? Weekend working? Childcare till 7 o'clock? We need passionate, energetic teachers to give passionate and energetic teaching and learning to our children. Removing 1265 will destroy this. Will destroy mental health, well-being and professionalism of our teachers. Please stop destroying. Please stop the contempt. Start rebuilding and start respecting. Conference, I second.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak, please? Michelle, thank you. Welcome.
Just very quickly to say that in the absence of adequate funding, our schools run on goodwill. And if we lose the goodwill of our teachers, we won't be able to do it.
Emily Prophet, West Midlands, Staffordshire branch. As you can see, the West Midlands are passionate about this one. Our teachers are already on their knees. COVID has proved this. They've worked above and beyond, around the clock, 24/7, and this is pure ludicrousy. We need to support this, colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the speaker at mic 2 and then the speaker at mic 1. Jim, would you like to come forward? Thank you.
Jim Nicholson, Stockport branch. I'm going to support this motion with my entire heart. And the reason why is this, and this is going to be very, very uncomfortable to say what I'm going to say. When I sit in joint union meetings, one of the main items that comes up time and time again about our members is that they don't address 1265 hours. It comes up in nearly every single meeting. And actually, by supporting this motion, we would be saying to our sisters and brothers in the other unions that actually we really do support you on this issue, and it would give a clear message to our membership that we have to address this and support teachers across the country. Thank you.
Me again, sorry. And West Midlands, yes. I support this motion, also not just for 1265, but for all those of our colleagues who are involved in flexible learning. Made absolutely clear to them, helps them juggle the very complex lives that some of them have. Therefore, although we're looking at 1265, I know we will also have in mind our colleagues.
Morning and welcome. If you've just joined us, we're live restreaming. I saw fingers and thumbs this morning. We're live restreaming from the National Association of Head Teachers, their annual conference, as part of an RSA fellowship project. I'm Nick Corsten. I run a community enterprise called STEAMco, which is a community interest organisation for creative carers, people who care about creativity, children and all our futures. And I know that a lot of people at the NAHT conference absolutely do care about that. And what we're doing today is we're literally live restreaming the event with their permission to get the important message out of the work that our brave school leaders are doing. A phrase that I was given by a head teacher, a brave school leader in Sunderland, Steve Williamson, 5 years ago, when I worked with that school community. And I looked around and I said, you're outstanding, yet you've got creativity and fantastic opportunities and 21st century skills, if you like, for the children here. What's the secret? He said, well, it takes brave school leaders. Leaders who understand and appreciate the value of art and creativity and the broadest possible curriculum and slightly more progressive approaches to education, if you like, for want of a better phrase. And that's where the phrase comes from. So if we cut through now to the grand hall here at the RSA, the Royal Society of the Arts, here in central London. We have the NAHT speech live in progress. They're live streaming it on Facebook, and they have given us permission, because they don't have the technology available today, they have given us permission to restream this event to our Twitter, Facebook and YouTube channels today. So we can cut to that now if you'd like to see that just for a moment.
In which case, let's go to the vote. Can I ask for those in favour to show?
This is the emergency vote against the capping of the removal of the cap on teachers' hours.
I'm really, really pleased. Thank you so much, West Midlands region and Amy, for bringing that emergency motion. It's made a very stimulating end to our first debating session this morning, so thank you for that. Just before we break, a couple of notices. One I gave earlier, I will repeat. Could the three people who are asking questions of the Secretary of State please meet in about 5 minutes in the Westminster suite? I think that's out the door and turn right. And also, for those of you who are involved in the private session after the Secretary of State has spoken to conference, if you're involved in that, you'll know who you are. Please stay behind briefly in this room now to run through logistics. We have about a 37-minute break. I would encourage you not only to obviously 37, yes, I know, because I'm too nice to you all. I would encourage you to not only have a cup of coffee, please do spend some time visiting the exhibitors. It really, really is important that we show interest and engage. So please, as well as a coffee, do that. Be back in here promptly for 11:30 when Sinead McGrearty will be speaking with us. Thank you.
So this is interesting. So sounds like we've got the Secretary of State. Now I need to look this up. I don't know which one they've got, whether it's the new State Education Secretary. I'm going to look this up. I think I'm going to wrap this up now, actually, and maybe just cut to a little film about what it is that we do here at STEAMco, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. So let me just cut to this short film now, and then we'll catch up with you later on. We're going to watch this film, we'll then cut, and then we'll start a new stream, because if they've got the Education Minister, we really do need to get that live. Thanks for joining us this morning. Proud to support our brave school leaders and other creative carers, people who care about creativity, people who care about children, and people who care about all our futures. Fantastic, and we're so grateful to the support and allyship of members of NAHT across the UK in these last few years. So let's play the film, and we'll see you in the next session. We're all born artists. The problem is to remain an artist as we grow up. That was Pablo Picasso. And I think we've got to help our kids, all our kids, aim high in life. Not just high, but higher than high. We've got to help our kids find their passion, their art. So I'm Nick Corsten. I'm just a dad. I'm co-founder of STEAMco. One day maybe I'll be the CEO, I don't know. So Steam Co is a non-profit community enterprise that helps connect our kids with their art and our communities with their schools by running creativity days. And we want to get the whole community involved. We want people who've had kids, not had kids, got kids, whatever, to come and work with us to help us run these days.
It's magic! It's magical!
What inspired me? Well, I saw a talk by Sir Ken Robinson. I read half a book called What's the Point of School? On what we should be teaching our kids. And I went to Camp Bestel, which is really a Glastonbury for kids. And I thought, I want this in my kids' school. I've got a lovely little film my dad gave me of me when I was 1 and him with my first ever train set. And I show that to kids in schools all over the country. And how my dad gave me the greatest gift. He gave me my art. Because art is what we call it when what we do might connect us to somebody else. So art could be painting, it could be photography, it could be cooking, it could be coding, it could be dancing, it could be design, it could be DJing, it could be robots, it could be rockets. The fun, the excitement that we have making and firing rockets in schools is to be seen, to be believed.
This is the best day of my life.
This truck contains everything you need to run a creativity festival in a primary school. 30 coding kits with the BBC Microbit. We've got rocket making kits. We do cardboard challenge. We can do the egg drop. We've got a t-shirt printing machine so we can print I Love Art t-shirts. So the kids design their own logo, take a selfie. We've had thousands of posters of those done. That's with JR, French street artist JR. So we've got communities all over the country designing I Love Art logos, taking photos, and we sent them off to JR, and he's printed 1,000 of these off for us, which we're fly posting all over the country. So in lockdown, we got an Arts Council grant and we built a green screen TV studio. We've been live streaming events all summer. We did a 3-day Glastonbury event where we built a half-sized pyramid stage from cardboard and code and ran 3-day events. We had Martin and Gary Kemp. We had Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols on stage alongside community artists, dads and their kids. And we had a young lad from Leeds called Lenny who played his piano on stage, all virtual. And that's what we want to do. Lockdown's not going to lift in a hurry, and we're running festivals from a spare bedroom here in Paddington, but we need people involved. We want people to collaborate for creativity.
I think they're doing fantastic work with Steam Co.
For me, collaboration is everything.
Elton John gave me the greatest gift. Actually, he made a film, I don't know if you saw it, with John Lewis, where basically he tells the story of how he was given a piano as a kid and worked hard and made literally $1 million. I saw that film, ripped it off, put our own subtitles on it, and Elton John retweeted it. It had 50,000 views in an hour, and I went on a 2-week UK tour from Cornwall all the way to Carlisle, showing that film, showing my train set film, talking to kids about art and creativity, letting off rockets, and inspiring schools across the country in our 12 days of Creative Christmas tour.
You've inspired one little boy in particular, a very quiet boy, and as that rocket shot into the air, we heard the words blast off come out of his mouth.
Innovation, technology and dreams rocketing up to the sky.
The state education system that we have, a lot of people feel it's been narrowed and narrowed and narrowed, focusing on teaching and testing of highly academic subjects, which are important, which are right for some kids, but it's not for everybody. And some kids come out of the education system literally broken. 9 out of 10 schools in Britain have reported cutting the arts in some way or another, which is a real tragedy. And we're going to lose that cutting-edge creativity that made Britain so famous. Creativity is Great Britain, after all. The ideal future for me would be a whole load of these trucks on the road with passionate, enthusiastic, committed, creative people, helping connect kids with their art and communities with their schools all the way across the UK. As Albert Einstein said, imagination can take us anywhere.
I would like to have Steam Co Day in my classroom.